And look at this difference. It is insane. Like, look at that. It is absolutely night and day. It's people on Instagram are like, why does your footage look so good? And it's because I spend like 2 minutes just color correcting each clip. What's up? Tim Humphreys here with another GoPro video editing tutorial. Today we're going to go over how to color correct flat light, snowy condition type of footage. And we're also going to go over how sometimes in really low light, your footage will twinge blue. So I will show you how to take care of that. All right, before we start, we go to our monitor settings, and we want to make sure that we're in sRGB mode. If you click through other modes, it'll drastically change how the colors appear to you. So sRGB is the one that we use. That is the standardized video editing color profile or whatever. Anytime you color correct, sRGB. So we're in Adobe Premiere. We have our first clip. I'm going to find somewhere that kind of has like some of these tracks here. What we do is we open up the Lumetri Color tab on the right, or you could always go into Effects. You can start typing in Lumetri and you'll find it in Video Effects, Color Correction, Lumetri Color. What I do right off the bat with pretty much every bit of GoPro footage that I have is in the Lumetri tab, I go to Creative, and then I turn Sharpen to 20. And then put the saturation at like 125. Bring out the orange in my pants a little bit. Okay, so once I put my basic 2 settings on that I always use, let's go over to the Lumetri Scopes tab here up on the top left, and let's bring up the Waveform RGB. This graph pretty much represents 0 is totally black, and the top of it is totally white. And right now what we're seeing is we have this giant thick band in the middle here, and then it's pretty spread out on the bottom. So I use this graph as like a reference when I do a lot of color correcting, and pretty much this thick band here at the top is all the highlights in our video. So this kind of represents like the snow and stuff, and then we'd see the rest of this that's kind of spread out into the shadows is more like representative of the trees. Let's add a little exposure to it because we're like pretty low on the exposure. So I'm just gonna bring this up by like, I don't know, 1.3 or something. We're already looking better. So let's go back to the curves, and this is really what you want to do. So usually when you do like a contrast curve, it sort of looks like this. Only problem is when we start doing this, it kind of like doesn't really give us any more detail in these tracks here at all. So what I actually like to do is I start dragging the top out this way, and I'm watching the graph and I'm trying to stretch this up to the top somewhere here. And then I start pulling this curve down. So what we're trying to do is basically put the steep part of the curve up towards the highlights, and that thin band that we had before, we want to raise it up and like spread the band out and make it wider. Okay, and if you keep doing this to a certain degree, you'll get weird color splotchiness and banding, and eventually it'll stop working. So it's like somewhere right here at this crazy amount, we have like the maximum amount of contrast in the tracks. It really pulled out a lot of detail, compared to without it. That's like an insane amount of detail that it pulls. But our pants and the darks, they start looking all funky, so we have to kind of try and hit somewhere in the middle. Tune that steep part of the curve in, and then we can even mellow out the bottom part too. I kind of look at the trees while I'm doing this to make sure those aren't too bright. So it goes from this to that. Like, that's an insane amount of contrast that you're actually able to pull out of the highlights and the details. So you'll notice in the graph that kind of get some of this weird blue kind of tinging to it. And I think you can sort of see it in the snow here. There's a little bit of this like cyan to it. So if you really want to get in, you could take the Luma sat curve and kind of just drag this. You notice how when I mess with this curve and pull it in, that color kind of goes away here. So what I'm doing right there is I'm just desaturating all the highlights. So sometimes you got to play with it, mess around with it, and tune it in. But this is the real secret here. The big downward curve, that is how you make flat light footage look good. It's all about taking the thin band of the waveform, the snow, and bringing it up, and then trying to stretch it out a bit without kind of messing anything else up. So again, we flip it on and off. It's night and day. Look at that detail we're able to pull out. And even when I'm landing too, I'm upside down in the air trying to spot my landing. There's just so much more detail. Wow. Onto the clip that's too blue. So here we have me riding some sweet pillows through the trees, but it is very blue. Now, if we take a look at this graph, this is a whole different story, than this other one when we started. This looks completely different than how this looks. What do we do with this? We can start by adjusting the temperature a little bit. That'll help us balance it out. We don't want to go too far because then the trees start looking a little too orange and fake. We can go to our curves, and we can go to our Lumiverse saturation. We can try. We're not quite in the highlights, so we can maybe find a zone or something in the middle, but like that. That kind of gives it a nice, like, blue to white gradient, sort of. So you could kind of attack it this way a little bit too, but if there's other things in the mid-range, like the trees up there, then you lose the saturation on those. So that might not be our best option in this scenario. What we could use is the hue versus saturation curve, though. And since it's blue, we could always do a little eyedropper test, so it's somewhere in there. You can double click to get rid of your markers, and I could set some new ones a little wider. And I'm just going to pull this down a little bit here. That's kind of really, so that's really all you need to do. A little column A, a little column B, goes from that to that. And then so we can bring our exposure up just a little bit. Let's bring our shadows up here. Bring the highlights up too. And we had our 20 sharpness, and I don't really want to add saturation to this one. I don't know. It's just with the blue being super blue, I don't think the shot needs more saturation. This one's a little tougher to put the curve on just because of how bright this whole area is kind of compared to the rest of this. Or with this other flat light clip, everything's kind of the same light at the top end. Where this, we have this one little band of here that's a completely different exposure. So actually, this kind of shows why you'd use more of a traditional curve, is because kind of drag it back, kind of keeps that light up there sort of controlled, and then still allows you to have the graph be kind of steeper where you need the contrast. Hopefully this helps you understand when you're editing like super, super flat light footage, where like everything's all kind of one level, that you go this kind of more drastic straight down kind of concave curve than the normal footage where there is that big difference of super bright to super dark just inherently in the footage. That's when you go with kind of the more standard contrast curve. And then with dealing with the blueness, you want to avoid doing anything too drastic, avoid splotchy colors, stuff like that. So that's about it. This is how you kind of handle two of the most difficult to handle color correction situations that you encounter with skiing, snowboarding, winter type footage, especially in the POV type environment where you really want to be able to make out every little detail. Hopefully you all learned something, because I mean, look at this difference. It is insane. Like, look at that. It is absolutely night and day. It's people on Instagram are like, why does your footage look so good? And it's because I spend like 2 minutes just color correcting each clip. That's it. That's all you got to do. If you guys like the video and learned some stuff, maybe consider subscribing. If you are purchasing a GoPro anytime in the future, you wouldn't mind clicking my affiliate link in the description, and doesn't cost you anything, but it gives me a little commission on the sale, helps your boy out, and maybe keep these tutorials rolling. So, all right, that's it. Peace out.